we want to help be their voice and help elevate them to say, we're going to help you get what you need because it's important to you and it's important to your community.
People come from really different life backgrounds, a lot of different stories, and so we want to be able to say, how do we bring those stories to the table?
That's what we're here to do, is we're here to make changes that all students can benefit from.
Welcome to the 2019 Associated Students of Oregon State University Presidential Debate, brought to you by Orange Media Network and ASOSU.
I'm Delaney Shea, news editor for the Daily Barometer.
And I'm Joe Wolf, web and mobile manager for Orange Media Network.
Tonight, we are joined by the 3 tickets running for student body president and vice president. They are Ayla Bussell for president, and Leif Larson for vice president, Rachel Josephson for president, and Kylie Benish for vice president, and Alex Luther for president, and Trenton Joyner for vice president.
We will be asking questions of each ticket related to 3 themes chosen by the ASOSU Elections Committee. The themes are student fees, advocacy and social justice, and qualifications for the office.
All questions were written by Orange Media Network staff, and the candidates have not seen them ahead of time.
Each ticket will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer each question. After all 3 tickets have had the opportunity to answer, they will each be given 1 minute to respond to their fellow candidates in the same order they answered.
Included with each theme, we will also pose questions taken from the students of Oregon State directly to each of the tickets for their thoughts.
We, as the moderators, will ask questions of each ticket, keep time, and ensure the debate remains civil and professional.
Now, each candidate will be given 2 minutes for their prepared opening statements.
First, we have Ayla and Leif.
A group of beavers is called a family. Seriously. And in your time at OSU, that's often what college begins to feel like. One big family made up of some of the most inspiring, passionate, and dedicated students you'll ever meet. When Leif and I sat down to plan our campaign, there were 4 main issues that stood out to us: mental health awareness and advocacy, inclusion and representation, environmental sustainability and climate change awareness, and communication and visibility. We want to destigmatize conversations surrounding mental health and focus on revamping mental health programs to make them more impactful for all students. We want to maintain a strong presence at all cultural resource centers and help amplify the voices of marginalized students. We want to cut our carbon footprint in half and get OSU back on track to being carbon neutral by 2025. We want to stay in constant communication with the student body and remain accountable to our goals.
Ayla and I have 3 years combined experience working in ASOSU, fighting for students' rights, and advocating for our fellow Beavers. My experience as a peer advocate at the ASOSU Office of Advocacy and Ayla's experience as an ASOSU senator set us up for a perfect, seamless transition into the presidential and vice presidential roles. Our combined legislative and policy-making experience, as well as our community building and activism work we've engaged in on campus since day 1, set us up to lead OSU to reach greater heights. Our campaign is driven by 5 core values: respect, honesty, compassion, inclusion, and accountability. We have realistic goals, a clear vision, and a passion for serving students.
In order to create a campus that works for everyone, we will listen to student concerns, advocate on your behalf, and stand with you in humble solidarity, because we are Beavers together. My name is Ayla Bussell, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
And my name is Leif Larson, and my pronouns are he, him, his.
Thank you so much for having us.
Next is Rachel and Kylie.
I am Rachel Josephson.
And I'm Kylie Benish.
And we are running for president and vice president of ASOSU. Our thorough dual understanding of the complexities, inner workings, and budgets surrounding ASOSU and OSU will allow us to excel in these roles. Kylie and I have utilized ASOSU to its full potential to implement multiple campus-wide services in the past 3 years. We were just getting started. These positions would allow us to expand upon our previous initiatives and enact new ideas towards change on this campus.
Our experience is extensive, and Rachel and I are highly endorsed by former and current members of ASOSU and other student leaders because of it. Our experience has allowed us to craft initiatives which are tangible, within our executive power, and help reduce unmet need on this campus. We will lead ASOSU to a higher standard, kindling relationships with outside organizations which will last for following administrations, maximizing the representation expected of the organization. We will set a precedent of what is expected of ASOSU as we navigate the challenges that we already understand will come our way. Since Rachel and I already know what is realistic, we can promise you that all the initiatives we have planned are attainable. Each of our pillars contributes towards the betterment of student wellness at OSU. People, services, and surroundings are the interest areas and deserve the utmost care, and our initiatives reinforce each of those.
Our administration will improve upon mental health issues on this campus because Kylie and I will build community and establish more mental health support programs. ASOSU has the power to improve upon services already implemented throughout Oregon State, as well as those internal to the organization itself. Our administration will bring the campus closer to carbon neutrality with presence both at the state capitol and with OSU leadership.
Our leadership ability will allow us to be successful throughout our time at ASOSU. We will listen, we will represent, we will delegate, and we will govern. While we acknowledge that we have certain qualifications that make us apt for these roles, we are also lifelong learners. Rachel and I want to learn from our students, we want to hear their voices and help amplify them. This campus has contributed so much to our lives, and we hope to give back to it.
We are 2 women running for office. We are qualified, dignified, and ready to motivate and ready to serve you.
Thank you. And finally, we have Alex and Trenton.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Luther, and I'm a junior studying English with minors in business and writing.
My name is Trenton Joyner. I'm a 4th-year student in bioengineering studying with a minor in exercise physiology. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Together, Trenton and I have sat down and talked about what we believe can really be improved here on this campus. We've come up with a campaign called Cultivating a Holistic Community and Culture. Really, the essence of it is we want to get every aspect of the OSU community working to the betterment of the students here at Oregon State. We have 4 pillars that we're running on.
Yes, the pillars are represented under the codename RACS: representation, academic support, campus clarity, and safety and wellness. So representation is just us saying that we want to make sure that every student on this campus feels like they have a voice, feel like they matter, feel like they're loved and respected, and that the things that they feel and the things that they say are important to the university.
With academic support, I've worked within a couple different positions on campus in the last 2 years to learn about what it means to actually have support outside of the classroom. We want to have more education about resources for students as we are students first. We also want to help educate students about how they can have access and support within extracurriculars, professional development, and other kinds of situations that may occur outside of the classroom.
When we talk about campus clarity, we want to make sure that all the different departments and all different sectors of Oregon State understand what's happening with each other and are communicating and collaborating effectively to use our resources in the best way possible, as well as making sure that the students of Oregon State University understand what's happening when it comes to the decision-making processes of the school and are able to use their knowledge to create power and to help to drive the school forward.
And our last pillar was safety and wellness. We're wanting to really work with the university to say, how do we make our campus safer, and how do we respond when we're in difficult times of crisis? We also want to focus on emotional, physical, and mental health with the departments that currently exist on campus. Together, Trenton and I have sat down and talked about these and really focused on what we believe can be improved here at OSU by working with what currently exists. Together, we come from many different leadership positions on campus, many different identities, and many different perspectives that really help us push the ASOSU goals forward and really help us improve the OSU campus.
Thank you for your opening statements. We will now move to the first theme of the debate, student fees. Again, each ticket will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer the question. We will begin with Rachel and Kylie. The question is, how would your administration make student fee level decisions in the face of budget cuts due to lower enrollment?
I think the student enrollment decreasing is something not every student is aware of, and that's going to be something that's going to be very difficult for our administration and the ones following, because the decrease in enrollment is actually expected to continue and trend for the next few years. Student fees encompass 10 different units that get allocated money based on what Congress and the Student Fee Committee decides, and it will be really important to hear the voices of everyone in coming to decisions about student fee allocations.
Yeah, it'll be very important to balance the financial burden on every student on campus, because every student has to pay student fees, with the ability to fund the important programs that are funded by student fees. So we'll have to be very conscientious of how it impacts all students.
Basically, even this year, student fee units would get an increase in the funding that they received, but that increase didn't allow them to expand. It only allowed them to maintain an operational cost. Understanding what the needs of these units and what communities they serve and what exactly their money is going towards, and having transparency in each of those areas is going to be extremely important in having a fair student fee allocation process, as well as making sure all students are represented and still served, even with a decrease in enrollment. It'll be a really tough job for the administration, but we are very experienced in this role already.
Luckily, Rachel and I have been involved with the organization for 3 years, and we've seen 2 student fee budgets pass, so we have the knowledge and the capability to make the right decisions.
Thank you. Next is Alex and Trenton.
So I'm actually in my second year of being a part of the Student Fee Committee as a representative and liaison from the athletics unit. So I've seen a couple different budgets and actually the behind-the-scenes process of how we set the fees and how we can work better with Congress and the student body to say how do these fees get set. So one of the few things that we've really been focusing on, and I think is something that could be developed more within our student fees, is more collaboration between departments. For example, diversity and cultural engagement and athletics went through a really highly debated fee in the last few weeks. It was finally passed, but part of passing it really included collaborating with resources between the two departments. We've seen it before with the MU and rec sports, with MU and student leadership and involvement, so we really want to push that. We also want to have more collaborations with student health services and CAPS and have more meetings with those two units, which are outside of the student fee committee purview, but also included within the discussion, so we're aware of how high the actual fee will be. And also within that, we want to have meetings required of the 10 units and the unit directors for those student fee funded units and have more discussions, so they're aware of what all the other units are thinking for their increased fees.
Absolutely. It's all about being as effective as possible with the students' money. However we can make them use of their money to help and encourage collaboration and make sure that we're using the money and making the money stretch as far as possible, because we do understand that there is a limited amount of money. Just making sure that we are using everything to the best of our ability and increasing collaboration by doing so.
Thank you. And now Ayla and Leaf.
Thank you for the question. With that anticipated decline in enrollment next year, we're very committed to fiscal responsibility and keeping student fees as low as possible while also adequately funding what needs to be funded on this campus. That looks like operational cultural resource centers who can pay their staff a fair wage. That means really working with each student fee funded unit to see what exactly they need and how we can help them reach their goals. By looking at each student fee funded unit and individually listening to our peers, we can better serve our campus community. During my time at OSU, I've had the pleasure of being the Oregon State Hillel president, and through this role, I've really understood how to manage a sizable budget and how to provide and delegate responsibilities to my staff, so I kind of know the inner workings of that.
I think it's really important when we talk about student fees that we're making sure that we include all student voices in the decisions of how those fees are allocated. Through my time at OSU, I've got to serve at the advisory board at the HSRC, which is one of the student fee funded units on campus. Through my time there, I've helped create the budget proposal to the student fee committee, and I really see the value of all the resources on campus that there are for students. And I think it's really important that we just hear from all students from their diverse backgrounds in order to make sure that we're putting the fees to where they need to go.
Now, each ticket will have a chance to respond to the other candidates' statements. Candidates, you'll each have 1 minute. We will start with Rachel and Kylie.
Something that's often not so known about with ASOSU, especially with the executive, is we have a lot of legislative power at the state level, and with that comes the ability to lobby for better higher education funding. Currently, Oregon actually dissolved its higher education committee. It's just K through 12. It's Margaret Doherty, but we really need to have a lot more presence because student fees are such a small part of tuition as well, and tuition is just so outrageously expensive, and it only continues to grow. So that's something we really need to nip in the bud right now, is really increase our legislative presence and work for higher education funding right now, or it's just going to get worse and worse, and we're going to have even more decreased enrollment because that's a big deterrent for coming to school and staying in school.
Right. Our administration is going to focus on lobbying efforts at the state capitol, especially hopefully the recreation of the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. Yeah.
Next is Alex and Trenton.
So one of the pieces that I really want to touch on when we're talking about student fees is the difference between the Student Fee Committee and Congress, and how there's been some disconnect in the last few years between what's decided with the Student Fee Committee and what Congress decides. So something we really want to focus on is how do we collaborate more between those two departments? How do we work from within ASOSU to build more transparency and more communication where Congress is aware of what the Student Fee Committee is doing as well as the Student Fee Committee is aware of what Congress is doing. This will make it more powerful when we get to the end and we are deciding in joint session of what budgets are passed. It will smooth the process out and it will make us all a little bit more knowledgeable about what's going on. Also within that, part of our campaign is transparency. We actually believe that transparency should be a requirement of these positions, and so we've pushed it to say campus clarity, of saying it's beyond just our administration. Within that, we are also wanting to have live tweets of congressional meetings, of joint sessions, student fee committee meetings, in order to actually be able to connect more with the student body. Yeah.
And now, Ayla and Leaf.
One of our main pillars of our campaign is communication and visibility. And along with that is making sure that students know on campus about what ASOSU is doing with their student fees. We want to make sure that we're hearing from a diverse range of people and their experiences to really hear from them about where they want those fees to be allocated. As president and vice president and the steward of those students' fees, we want to make sure that we're being transparent, we're posting what happens in those meetings, posting the meeting minutes, and letting people really know what the executive branch does.
Right when we take office, if elected, we really want to visit each student fee funded unit and make sure that we know the people that work there, that we know how things are done, and kind of build those relationships right from the start, just so that we can know exactly how we can work with those student fee funded units and how we can help them best achieve their goals.
Thank you all. We will now move to the second question of the debate. If elected, how would you value the Beaver Athletics student fee in particular? First up is Alex and Trenton.
So as I mentioned, I'm the Student Fee Committee Liaison for Athletics, and I've had an interesting experience with this. As being the liaison, I've had a direct experience with the athletics department, and I actually believe that we should be pushing how we fund all of these fees in particular. I think that some of that transparency between all 10 units, we've had some issues with transparency with the athletics fee before I was here, and so we've been wanting to work on how do we have more committees, how are we able to be more vocal and more verbal and more visible about this fee. So I really think that when we look at these budgets, we look at them as a whole. We look at beyond just each unit. I've been on the committee as a liaison, but beyond that, I don't actually vote on the athletics budget. I am in that role within advocating it, but outside of that role, I am simply a student who's a part of setting the entire student fee committee budget. So I think it's really important that we value every unit. Every unit has its own thing that it brings to campus. Athletics does have its own community building. It does have its perks, but at the same time, we have things such as the HSRC, the Family Resource Center, student leadership and involvement. Every piece of this elevates the OSU community beyond just one. So it works together with all 10 of those units.
Absolutely. In addition to that, we really need to make sure that we are understanding what the student athletes feel the budget is doing for them, and how they feel like the budget that is used for Beaver Athletics impacts them. The student athletes are what push Beaver Athletics, or what push athletics on this campus, to make sure that they are understanding of how the fee is being used and what is involved with the fee, and really getting to the understanding of how can we make the fee most effective for not only athletics but for everyone else on campus as well.
Next up is Ayla and Leaf.
We really plan to support athletics' decision to incorporate the financial strategy plan into their financial planning this year to phase out the athletic student fee over a period of time. We also really hope to be advised by our cabinet members on how they would like us to kind of deal with this, as they might have other kind of networks and know other people who have certain opinions about the athletic student fee. We really want to emphasize fiscal responsibility, though, and kind of, as Trenton said, hear from our student athletes and see what they need and see how we can help them achieve their goals as well.
We really just want to make sure that the units are funded properly on campus in order to make sure that everyone that's affected by those fees is included in the conversations when those decisions are being made.
And now, Rachel and Kylie.
So for a little bit of context, in the last student fee setting process, we sent the athletics and the DCE budgets to mediation, and in those we cut athletics and DCE came to an agreement where DCE got more funding this year and athletics got slightly cut. So Rachel and I both agree that athletics is very important to this campus, but student fees is a very small portion of their overall budget. So
Yeah, the student fees that get allocated to athletics actually go to a big pool each year. I think it's around $2.6 or $7 million. I could be a little bit off on that, but and other student fee units can typically just get funding only from student fees, so that's something to keep in mind when making these decisions, while also keeping in mind that there are a lot of students that get supported greatly by the athletics budget, and athletics is something that's clearly utilized in our huge Pac-12 university. Fiscal responsibility is key for student fee issues, because with enrollment going down and everything, with operational costs being harder to come by, a 5% increase in student fees, while it comes down to cents every year, if there's a 5% increase, then students 10 years from now have a huge financial burden, especially if we don't get better higher education funding from like federal or statewide services. So we really don't want to sign a budget that puts student fees above an increase of 5%. As that would just be an unjust financial burden for students. And of course, athletics is 1/10 of the units that we will have to hear from and represent and make sure that they get fair treatment as long as all the others.
Thank you. Candidates, you may now give your rebuttals. We will begin with Alex and Trenton.
Another piece that we wanted to talk about when we talk about the athletics fee is that it has the community aspect. Beyond that, we also want to partner, as Trenton mentioned, with student athletes. One way that we're wanting to do that is with the Damn Worth It campaign. The Damn Worth It campaign is focused on ending the stigma of mental health with student athletes. However, we want to work with the student athletes who are currently in positions within Damn Worth It and within athletics to say, how do we expand this to the entire campus, and how do we work with what they have been nationally recognized for and push that towards the entire campus. We really are wanting to focus on mental health and with the services that currently exist and with what departments currently exist, and we think that Damn Worth It is a really great collaboration and a really great use of funds and sharing of resources between the athletics department and the student body to have that kind of impact.
Absolutely, and we understand the importance of fiscal responsibility, as everybody else has said, and making sure that we are being fiscally responsible. And a way of doing that is by utilizing multiple pools of money, multiple different departments, and having them collaborate together to use their money more effectively.
Next is Ayla and Leaf.
I think that this conversation really comes back to one of Leaf and I's main pillars, communication and visibility. So remaining transparent, accountable, and clear with our goals. And part of this is really listening to students in that athletic community. And because the student fee makes up about 3 to 5% for athletics of their budget, we understand that there's other resources that athletics can use. And with that, we do want to make sure that everyone knows athletics is a very valuable aspect of our campus community and of our student fee funded units. But we also really need to look at the other student fee funded units and make sure that they're also able to adequately operate and get the resources they need.
I really just want to echo what Ayla and all the other candidates said. Fiscal responsibility is key. We also need to make sure that we have fair treatment to all the student fee funded units on campus, and we want to hear from the community about making sure that the entire campus is included in the conversations when it comes to the fee process.
And now, Rachel and Kylie.
One of the issues that really came up in joint sessions this year in Congress were how we got to those mediation processes. I would like to see a total revamp in how we get to actually getting all of our student fee funding units, the recommended budgets from them, because we thought that it was below the 5%. So everyone was happy, we were ready to go, and then we got new information, we were well over the 5%. Then we had only sent 2 different units to mediation. Those were DCE and athletics. Marginalized students had to come in front of Congress, which is primarily a white body, and unpack their trauma in order to get the funding that they need. And while that was really powerful, and athletics and DC were able to come to a negotiation, that can't be the norm, and that can't happen every single year. We need to make sure it's our duty to be responsible for our students to get this information out on the table and correctly out on the table before that even begins, because that can't keep happening every single year, and we can't have dichotomies between different student fee funded units year after year.
Rachel and I have experience in both the House and the Senate, so it'll be one of our priorities to ensure that senators and House representatives have all the information.
Thank you. We will now move to the third question. How do you intend to approach negotiations with outside lobbying groups such as the Oregon Student Association? First up is Ayla and Leaf.
We believe that OSA is an organization of principle, but we also recognize that there are many concerns raised with this organization. There is a negotiation process ongoing right now, and we'll eagerly await the results of this. And we look forward to reaching a positive solution in our roles. I think part of being an ASOSU is learning how to fulfill your duties, but also being flexible and capable of growing in your roles, and that's exactly what Leaf and I plan to do.
I think it's really important, and OSA has done a lot of great things for our campus. They've really advocated for us at the state legislature and helped to keep tuition low, and also helped to register students to vote, which are all really important things on campus. Moving forward to the next year with a budget cut to OSA, ASOSU is going to have to work harder, but I really feel like we are up to the task to fulfilling those roles and making sure that students are still represented in the state legislature, the federal legislature, and all those groups.
Next is Rachel and Kylie.
Yeah, outside organizations are specifically or especially powerful for large universities. We have kind of a whole bunch of different coalitions that do that. We supposedly are going to withdraw from the OSA if they reject our budget of $50,000. If they end up rejecting that budget, we will use it to hire a professional lobbyist, so we have representation all the time from a professional standpoint at the Capitol. There are also other organizations that are highly involved in lobbying at the Capitol, like the PSLA, the Presidential Student Legislative Advocates, which I'm a part of. I've helped strategize how we're going to lobby some of our agenda items on there. And coalitions like OSA, to go back around to that, are extremely powerful, but we had some kinks that we had to work out with that organization. I would really like to see us rejoin OSA maybe a few years from now and repair all of our broken ties, but for now.
Right, we don't want, OSA has done great work for Oregon State, but it came down having to make a decision between funding our own positions within the organization and then funding the OSA. And so the House and Senate collectively came to the decision that having more coordinator positions, we would have to cut the executive branch down to 5 people. We believe that those positions create the most change on campus, and that we can use those positions to send students to and hire lobbyists to lobby at the state level for our students.
Yeah, we will never be out of legislative advocacy in our administration.
And now to Alex and Trenton.
So to give everybody a little bit of context, OSA lost $50,000 of its $110,000, I believe it is, funding, which is our membership with OSA, Oregon Students Association, which lobbies at the state capitol. So as being part of the student fee committee process, I heard a lot of different sides of the story. And part of what I want to mention is currently, as my fellow candidates have mentioned, the purview is not in our decision of whether or not we will stay within OSA, it's with the current ASOSU Congress. So depending on how they decide will really affect how we move forward within this organization. We really want to emphasize that beyond just OSA, that we really want to capitalize on the student voices here at Oregon State. So part of OSA is they have caucuses for women of color, LGBTQ, so we really want to build, should we need to pull from OSA or should we need to have more changes to our lobbying structure, we would build those caucuses here with Oregon State students and have personal trainings and personal information sessions to be able to bring those students to the state capitol so their voices are still being heard. Within that, also speaking about fiscal responsibility and the responsibility of us as ASOSU, we also want to really make sure that the students' voices are being brought within the ASOSU branch, so students from those marginalized communities are also a part of the cabinet, which those positions would have been cut.
Absolutely. It's paramount is the voice of the students on our campus, and making sure that we have those students, putting those students in a position to make sure that they are being heard directly from their own mouths is of the utmost importance. However we can do that is the way we would like to go.
Candidates, you may now give your rebuttals to the other candidates' statements. We will begin with Ayla and Leaf.
Because of my experience as a senator in ASOSU, I understand the concerns raised within OSA, and I really think that the track record that Leaf and I have of listening to students and building connections will set us up nicely to make fiscally responsible decisions. With that being said, the current cut to OSA will still allow us to send students to important conferences like OSERA, like OSCC, and we look forward to continuing those conversations and really working with OSA to find a positive solution.
We know that going forward that we're going to have to work extra hard to make sure that the students that have been represented by OSA and all students here don't lose anything by losing OSA. We don't want to lose our representation in the state legislature, and we also would support hiring a professional lobbyist at the state capitol to represent students.
Next up is Rachel and Kylie.
State lobbying is where the privilege of being president and vice president is extremely evident. It's not where our opinions would come into play. It's where the students' opinions would come into play. We couldn't have every single student at Oregon State University going down to lobby on behalf of themselves to the legislature. That's why you elect your officials in order to do that. Kylie and I have talked about this time and time again. It is extremely important to hear other people's opinions and thoughts and concerns about things are going on in the university or with themselves that we can be vocal about to legislators, to OSU administration, and everything in between.
Collaboration with state legislators and other groups like the PSLA, and then, like we've mentioned before, this hiring a professional lobbyist will ensure that our students' voices are still prioritized at the Capitol.
And now, Alex and Trenton.
So I think it's really important to mention that while we're talking about this, we had a lot of testimonies come from people during the process at joint session, the student fee committee on both sides of supporting, and those who are frustrated with OSA. And a lot of things were said, and part of what I think we should do within our administration is how do we start to cooperate between these two sides? There were a lot of polarized opinions, and part of the student bodies, we want to really be a community. So I think first we want to start with how do we actually bring these voices together? Those testimonies were really powerful. They were really important on both sides. People had different experiences. But because people had different experiences, we want to bring them to the table and say, how do we work with you to be able to feel like you're being supported from the ASOSU administration?
Absolutely.
We will now hear a student body question, followed by 1 minute and 30-second responses from each ticket.
My question would be, what are they going to do with the student fees they collect, and how are they going to divide them among the responsibilities?
Our first answer will come from Rachel and Kylie.
Each of the units has drastically different needs. Each of them get funding maybe from outside sources or maybe not. We can look at all of the past records of the funding that's been allocated to them, as well as the different projects that they have going on that they're going to implement shortly. We can hear from students based on their thoughts on each of those issues. Distributing student fees is something that, of course, is done every single year. We work really hard with the student fee committee to do that. We work really hard with Congress to make sure that they know what's going on from students that came and talked to us.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that we can do as an administration is making sure that student voices outside of House and Senate understand what's going on with the student fee setting process. So we're going to encourage transparency and visibility of that process, and then making sure that students can come and speak about concerns they have with their specific student fee funded unit so that Congress can make the correct decision that will best suit the most students on campus.
Next up is Alex and Trenton.
So I think I've had a unique experience with ASOSU and Congress by being a part of the Student Fee Committee for 2 years. I've seen it on both sides. I've seen the collaboration between the two departments. I think one of the first places to start with this question of how do we distribute student fees is first, how do we educate the student body more about what units are student fee funded and where that money is going. From within our own committee, we've actually had discussions about how do we have more outreach, and I think it's really important for that outreach to go beyond just their committee and into the student body as well as ASOSU and the other members of Congress. Also, there's 10 different units. All units have a different goal. They have a different process. They have different events that they hold. So it's really important that we have every unit working together and that those fees are set for those. We also want more collaboration specifically between the Student Fee Committee and Congress, because right now we feel like there's a disconnect between those two processes, as both are really essential in setting the student fees.
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand the needs, as Rachel said earlier, of every student fee funded department on campus, and really understanding how we can serve them the best with the money that we have and being effective in the way that we can serve them all at the same time and having them cooperate with one another.
Thank you. And now, Ayla and Leaf.
So as Leaf and I said before, we really want to commit ourselves to fiscal responsibility. And part of this is really planning to listen to our students and also make sure that ASOSU Congress understands the student fee process. We would really love to hold an event in which students can come and learn more about the student fee process and also give their opinions and input. I think it's so important and crucial that the students outside of the ASOSU Congress understand the process and can kind of get that information so they can provide input as well.
And as Ayla and I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that we attend meetings with all the student-funded fee units on campus. We also want to encourage hearing from more students on campus and making sure that the Senate, House, and student fee meetings are at times that students can actually come and attend them. And then what happens in those meetings are posted and available to everyone to let them know what is going on in their student government.
Thank you, candidates, for your responses. When we come back from break, we will begin with our second topic, advocacy and social justice.
Knowing your strengths and what you love to do should be the path to figuring out what you will do.
Simply put, this is a show made by college students for college students.
Okay. I got a stick figure. Cowboy. Cowboy's right. Cowboy's correct.
Maybe go to South Street U instead. It'll be a comeback kid. Oh, that's two. Yeet!
Welcome back. Next up, we have the second theme of the debate, advocacy and social justice. The first question for Alex and Trenton is, how do you plan to support and include students of color and other underrepresented groups while in office?
So actually one of the first things that we talked about when we sat down was we actually want to bring those students more within our cabinet when if we were to be elected. We believe that those voices are really important and we don't want to speak for those people, so we want to put them into the leadership positions both within ASOSU and across campus to be able to have perspective and leadership experience and bring their stories to the table.
Absolutely. I've worked within diversity and cultural engagement for the last 3 years. I am a student of color here on this campus, proud student of color, and I think I have a very unique and acute sense of what a lot of students on this campus feel, and how we can connect with them, and how we can understand where they're coming from. And I think the very core of it comes from personal relationships. I have personal relationships with so many students of color on this campus, and I think fostering that relationship and fostering that understanding and that feeling that they are being supported, that they are being loved and cared about is the first step to making sure that they are having their opinions heard, which allows us to serve them in whatever roles that we can and make sure that their opinions and their feelings are turned into action that are taken by the student government and by the school. Just making sure that students of all different identities know that we represent and we understand all of their different identities without necessarily lumping all different students of color into one group. Really understand that they all have different needs culturally, and really just making sure that we are being very acute and aware of that and using that to form greater bonds and to enact change within the future.
Next is Ayla and Leif.
Thank you for the question. This is a really important thing to us, and that's why Leif and I put it as one of our pillars of our campaign, inclusion and representation. Leif and I's activism started early on. I've been involved in interfaith community building from a young age, and as a sophomore at OSU, I served as the SEDEC, or Social Justice Director for Oregon State Hillel, and planned programs and events surrounding justice for folks from all walks of life. Additionally, I'm pursuing a social justice minor. I've had that social justice education. I have the knowledge and experience taking social justice classes surrounding WMXN affairs, LGBTQ+ affairs, and I understand and I've listened to the barriers that Indigenous folks, disabled folks, and Latinx students and students of color on this campus face among so many other communities. So this really just comes back to our pillar and the fact that one of our main initiatives under that is that we want to go and have a reach out initiative where we go to each cultural center and we're present there and we're engaged and we're going to staff meetings and meeting with those students to make sure that they're really getting the support and that we're standing with them as allies and in solidarity.
Another one of our initiatives under this pillar is that we want to create a cultural competency training for all professors and instructors to take on campus. This would be a training that they would take just to learn a little bit more about the intersectional identities of students that they have in their classrooms, just to work towards making the classroom experience more holistically inclusive.
In 2017, the Oregon State Legislature actually passed the Cultural Competency Initiative. We really want to draw on this and help kind of get that conversation off the ground and start those dialogues as soon as possible.
Thank you. Finally, we have Rachel and Kylie.
We'd like to acknowledge that we have a couple privileged identities, and we know that allyship must be earned. You can't label yourself as an ally. And in our campaign, we refused to tokenize communities. We didn't want to use diversity as one of our pillars because we figured that mostly takes the role of tokenization in past ASOSU campaigns that we have seen. And ASOSU also in the past has been fairly complacent and therefore failed communities that when social justice issues have came up on this campus, particularly with white nationalism. And we will not be blind to the issues that students of color and other marginalized communities on this campus see. One of our first priorities is going to be making sure that ASOSU is a comfortable space for any student to come and talk to us at, because ASOSU has failed many communities in the past, and we will not be doing that in our campaign.
We believe it's ASOSU's responsibility that students know about what services and resources we are able to provide, and also that there are viable avenues through which real change can happen on campus, especially for marginalized groups.
Also, our cabinet in ASOSU is typically one of the most diverse spaces on this campus. Those are resources available to Kylie and I as president and vice president to draw from and get experiences from and get perspectives from, which are extremely important. There are tons of resources available to both the president and vice president in those arenas.
We will not be making unilateral decisions. We will have lots of input.
Candidates, you may now give your rebuttals. We will begin with Alex and Trenton.
So I think that both in Trenton and I, in discussing about running and our campaign, we decided that we both have really unique life experiences. I'm a woman on campus, he's a student of color on campus. We both have very different life stories and backgrounds, but we've learned to value each other's story and work together to say, how do we use those stories and use those experiences of valuing each other to bring students more to the table and create a better community at OSU. That includes, because we've learned from each other's stories, that we understand the importance and the necessity of working with other students here at OSU and the necessity of their stories. communities. Beyond that, we've had different life experiences. We've built this trust between each other that we both are aware of our own privileges and of our own, how we show up in certain spaces and within our identities. And so beyond that, we really want to say, how do we apply that and that trust between each other to the rest of the student body?
Absolutely. Our ticket understands the difference between diversity and inclusion and the importance of our inclusion and representation over diversity, and just making sure that rather than going out and making sure that we are hearing students' voices, making sure that we are bringing students in and making sure that they're having their voices heard firsthand.
Next up is Ayla and Leaf.
One of the main reasons Leaf and I ran for these roles is that we saw the need for allyship and solidarity on our campus. As a Jewish student, when things like the Pittsburgh shooting happen, when 11 Jewish adults are killed in a temple for praying, or when things like trucks are driven onto campus with anti-Semitic banners on the sides of them, I need students to be there for my Jewish students on campus. And additionally, when there's things going on that are harming other communities, we need to be there for those students, because when someone is trying to divide us, we all need to stand together and come together and be there for each other. Leaf and I have a track record of being allies. Since freshman year, we've gone out into the community and built those necessary relations, and we promise to continue that if we are elected.
Through my work at the ASOSU Office of Advocacy, I've seen the disparate impact that OSU policies have on marginalized communities. And we really want to work towards breaking down those barriers for those students. Additionally, we never want to speak for people with identities that we don't represent, but we always want to invite them to the decision-making table.
And now, Rachel and Kylie.
Oftentimes, past ASOSU campaigns and administrations and everything have been focusing very much on people of color, which is obviously a very important thing to focus on. But we also really want to bring to light the injustices that transgender folks face, people with disabilities. One of our initiatives is to make sure that new building renovations and just new buildings in general are Silver or Platinum LEED certified, which is how green a building is. But in that, we also really want to make sure that people with disabilities have access to these buildings that isn't like unfair or unrealistic. Also, I'd like to highlight that both Kylie and I are women, and I'm not really sure when the last time 2 women were president and vice president of this organization. We really thoroughly understand the challenges and the difficulties because we've enacted initiatives by way like the president and vice president would in general. And we really know how to support each other in these roles.
Yeah, we promise that we will work to break down the injustices that we see and we hear from students that occur on this campus.
ASOSU needs to have a better track record with marginalized communities on this campus, and we will be the administration to do that.
We will now move to the second advocacy question. How would you connect students to mental health resources and use your position on campus to discuss these issues? First, Ayla and Leaf.
Thank you for the question. Mental health awareness and advocacy is really important to Leaf and I, and that's why we made it our first pillar. For this, we really want to create a warm line initiative, which is similar to a hotline, but at the end of a stressful day when you're balancing school and work and a social life, you can call this hotline and a trained student volunteer will pick up the phone and kind of give you some tips on how to relieve some stress and hopefully make your term and your school year a little bit better. We really want to place an emphasis on destigmatizing conversations around mental health and continue the current administration's progress in the mental health arena, because it is such an important issue for all students.
Another one of our initiatives under this pillar is that we want to create a mental health screening initiative. This would be something similar to the Alcohol EDU and Haven programs that students take their freshman year, but it would be an extra step to talk about mental health awareness. Right now, CAPS is actually working on a program called Cognito, which is something that we really want to work with CAPS to make sure that we can roll that out as soon as possible. This would be a screening just to teach people a little bit about the mental health resources that they have here on campus and make that high school to college transition easier.
Thank you. Next, we have Rachel and Kylie.
Yeah, the mental health aspect of our campaign is extremely important. Currently, I've worked to actually implement a support network on this campus. We got this program from a university in Michigan entirely for free, which was really exciting because often these things can get pretty pricey. But it brings together students of different identities, and they can just chat. It's a student-led discussion pretty much that helps, has a lot of data behind it showing that it really helps build community. So we're very experienced in implementing new mental health programs. We firmly believe that there can never be too many mental health programs on this campus. Kylie will talk about that with our initiative.
Yeah, so one of our initiatives within our campaign is a anonymous pen pal type support network that we hope to implement, where students will be paired based on a shared mental health concern. which we hope would destigmatize mental health care on campus and also just build community in general. I think a lot of students perhaps feel uncomfortable going into CAPS, and so we feel that the anonymous aspect will be a good starting point for students who want to engage in mental health care.
Yeah, one thing I'd also like to highlight while we're on that subject is ASOSU only has so much power. As much as I would really love to hire different counselors that could speak different languages so we can actually serve our international student community. All that we can really do is implement new programs that can hopefully highlight the areas that can actually support these students. And then we can pressure OSU administration to get those issues completed. Yes, and also we want to implement more showcasing of the mental health programs that we already have on this campus.
And finally, Alex and Trenton.
So as mentioned before, we really want to focus on student health and wellness from a holistic perspective, but we also want to use resources that currently exist on campus. So the example that we used was Dan Worth. We really want to work with student athletes and build that program to be both students and student athletes here on campus. They've been nationally recognized, as I mentioned. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to work with the progress that they've had and build it towards the whole student body to really destigmatize student mental health. Another part that I really want to mention is at the joint session this last week where the diversity and cultural engagement and athletic fees were decided on. A couple students had testimonies reflecting on how the community resource centers were actually mental health support systems for them. They had communities, they had people within their identities who were supporting their decisions and supporting their time here on campus. I think it's really important that we emphasize that those exist. They are not your conventional view of what student mental health support looks like, such as CAPS. But within that, they still have that support for the entire OSU community.
Right, and also connecting to that, understanding that mental health care and mental health awareness looks very different within very different communities and for people with very different identities. So understanding that there's no one cookie cutter way of performing mental health care, but understanding that we need to work with communities and work with people with different identities to really recognize what healthcare means to them and what it means in their communities and the history that mental health care has in their communities so we can serve them better on a more individualistic level based on their identities, as well as just making sure that we are creating comprehensive plans and recognizing holistic health and recognizing that mental health is a part of that. So recognizing that mental health is a part of your physical health, is a part of your emotional health. They all connect and they all affect one another.
Candidates, you may now give your rebuttals. We will begin with Ayla and Leaf.
Another one of our initiatives under our mental health pillar is to start dialogue surrounding the revamp of alcohol EDU and SPAU. SPAU is a great program, but it could definitely be improved. Leaf and I, something that's really important to us is sexual violence and sexual assault awareness. We think that it's so important that when you're a freshman, the program you take has a profound impact on how you're going to go about your college career so that you can be an advocate for survivors, you can be a resource, and you can be someone that will help and be an ally.
We want to make sure that all the mental health resource centers on campus are funded adequately. And like Trenton was saying, from the testimony that we've heard at the joint sessions, we've really heard that the DCE centers also serve as those places that students can get access to critical needs beyond what they can just get at CAPS. So we really want to make sure that we're having dialogues with everyone on campus about their unique mental health needs in order to make sure that everyone has access to those.
Next is Rachel and Kylie.
For mental health services to operate at their full capacity here on campus, students have to know that they exist. So one of our initiatives within our platform is a short presentation that would go into large lecture-style classes about the existing spiritual, cultural, mental, physical well-being centers on campus so that students who are often incoming to the campus know what services are available for them to use.
Also, students have time and time again came to ASOSU and said, we need more mental health resources. We need this. That's why in House of Representatives, I've worked to implement the support network instead of doing something like passing legislation. I took action because I know that it's important. And that's what Kylie and I want to do with our campaign too, with things like the presentation to spread awareness and implementing a new mental health service. Also, we would definitely be collaborating with different groups on campus to get more funding, more awareness of the need for mental health care on this university. We have a lot of resources, but simply it's not enough.
And now to Alex and Trenton.
So as we were talking about, there's a movement to say, how do we destigmatize student mental health. Beyond that, we also want to say, how does student mental health impact all the rest of our health here on campus? You can't actually operate effectively as a student without physical, mental, emotional, all kinds of aspects of your health and wellness. So we really want to focus on how do we collaborate with CAPS, Student Health Services, and Dixon for those 3 departments to have as many resources and collaborative programs as possible so that way students are able to access them as readily as they need, as well as get the services that they really require. We also want to say that we talk about sexual awareness and sexual health and sexual assault here on campus. Educating students about resources such as SARC here on campus, which is confidential. You are able to report without actually having to have any police filing. I think that's really important for us to say this is how we support you as survivors, because that also plays into mental health.
Absolutely. We need to make sure that these conversations around mental health, around sexual health, around all the different health issues that may happen within campus and with our community are more deeply rooted than something that may happen to an individual, and really getting to having those tough conversations and asking those tough questions to really get to the root of the issue.
Thank you. Our third question for this theme is, what is your understanding of the value of the cultural resource centers? First, Rachel and Kylie.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's something that's came under scrutiny a lot in Congress, which both Kylie and I have seen in Senate and the House. They are extremely valuable. I cannot stress that enough. They do so much more than their job descriptions, time and time again. They are mental health care providers for their students. They stay hours after. They they let students sleep in their couches when they need to. Like, these community centers on our campus, or these cultural centers on this campus, build so much community, and their resources are absolutely invaluable, and every dollar given to DCE does so much more than a dollar given to many of the other student fees on this campus, because those students work so hard and they are so well used.
We heard a lot of testimony this past student fee setting process from students who frequently use those cultural centers, and hearing from those students and how they've impacted these students' experiences at Oregon State was invaluable, and I think guided the decision to send the DCE budget to mediation to increase funding for those centers, essentially. So absolutely integral to a lot of students' experience at Oregon State University.
And not just experience, but literally just well-being and survival. These, I cannot stress enough, even though I don't really affiliate with many of the centers on this campus, I am so certain that they are one of the most important standalone buildings that we have. We need to absolutely push for funding. We need to go visit them when we are invited so we can be good allies to them. We need to support them in every single possible way that we can, because they are so important to so many students on this campus.
Next is Alex and Trenton.
So in my time on the Student Fee Committee, we had students from the Cultural Resource Centers, multiple positions, students who are in leadership positions there, students who just use the resource centers, come and speak at both the Student Fee Committee, Joint Congress, and the second Joint Congress that we had. And it was really powerful and impactful to hear these students talk about why these centers matter to them. And the thing that you can walk away with when you hear these students speak is the emphasis of community. At OSU, we want to build that community. We want to be a family. But the only way that we can do that is if students feel like they belong. And these cultural centers give students the opportunity and the resources necessary to feel like they belong here at the OSU community.
Absolutely. I've worked at the Lonnie B. Harris Black Culture Center over the last 3 years, and that means I've been a part of DC for the last 3 years, and I've had close interactions with all the cultural centers personally, and I can tell you firsthand that these cultural centers really save lives. These cultural centers allow students to stay in school. If it weren't for a lot of these centers, a lot of students wouldn't be able to graduate. A lot of students might not even be with us here in Corvallis right now. So understanding that this is absolutely integral for not only the students who feel like they're being served through their identity by the communities that are shaped at the CRCs, but also for students who are not. The CRCs, you go to any of the CRCs and they tell you how they are a place of education. That's the first and foremost purpose of the cultural resource centers, is to educate people on the cultures of whatever center that is a part of, and making sure that other students are able to come in and learn about what's happening at the center and what cultures are taking part of the center. And that education has launched conversations that have changed the mindsets of students and allow students to feel as if they have more of an understanding of each other and be able to grow within a community.
Thank you. And finally, we have Ayla and Leaf.
Thank you for the question. The cultural resource centers here on campus are such a vital part of student life, and they are providing an incredibly valuable experience to all students. They are so valuable that when we heard the testimony from all the students at Joint Congress and various budgetary meetings, we learned that they literally have saved the lives of students, and as Trenton said, prevented many students from dropping out of college. We need to adequately fund each center and make sure that they have operational staff, that students have fair working wages, and we need to support these students and give them the resources they need that they could not get elsewhere otherwise.
As an administration, we understand the value of cultural resource centers on campus. Cultural centers are the pride and joy of OSU. The testimony that we heard from students at the Joint Congress sessions really inspired me and made me realize how important these centers are. They really have saved lives. We also want, as a future administration, we would love to expand the cultural resource centers, provide them with the funding they need, and move some groups into bigger spaces. We understand the value of these safe spaces on campus. In high school, I helped form the first GSA at a public high school in North Dakota, and to me, finding that safe space for students who identified as LGBTQ+ really made me feel more safe and comfortable at my public school, and I really see that same value here on campuses of our cultural centers.
Candidates, you may now give your rebuttals. We will begin with Rachel and Kylie.
I'd like to reiterate again that as president and vice president, we represent all students. And although no one person can hold every single identity, we can still listen, and we have heard you. That is why I've been motioning at the multiple joint Congress sessions to move gallery comments to before the vote, because I thought it was unacceptable that we were going to vote on something before all the students that had routinely showed up, taken hours and hours out of their time during midterm season to come speak to us. I thought it was unacceptable that we were going to make a vote without hearing them.
One of our campaign priorities is to ensure that DCE has enough funding next year to operate even at higher levels than they currently are. Students came and spoke to us at Congress. It's time to stop making DCE our bargaining chip and just get it done before it has to go to mediation and ensure that they have the funding to operate at the highest capacity.
Next up is Alex and Trenton.
So one of the things that continuously came up during the student fee committee process is that students wanted, from the community resource centers, wanted students of the entire OSU body to know that they're more than just a printing center. They're really defined and labeled as that. That's how they're described from other resources on campus. And so we really want to break that down and say, how do we actually describe these resource centers so students are able to access them better? It plays to our pillar on representation. It plays to our pillar on campus clarity. We want to start to educate students much sooner about what resources are available. So when students come to OSU and tour, they're actually aware that we have cultural resource centers, that they have those communities that are already present and able to support them.
Absolutely. The Cultural Resource Center is something that are unique to Oregon State, especially within the Pacific Northwest, and we need to use that unique resource to our advantage as a university and as a student body. We need to make sure that we're educating students as early as possible within their college career about the Cultural Resource Centers and what they can do, and allow those resources to do their job and impact students as they've impacted many students like myself from their freshman year, and allow them to grow and have the opportunity to take on other leadership positions within their career.
Thank you. And now, Ayla and Leif.
One idea that Leif and I have really talked a lot about is having meetings with a representative or two from each cultural resource center. We know that one person can't speak for the whole cultural resource center, but we still think that this is an integral part of getting the conversation started. And if elected, we would love to be on the same page as all the cultural resource centers, hearing what's happening and what's affecting each community so that we can stand as allies and we can truly be accountable to our goals.
Yeah, community research centers go way beyond their job descriptions and requirements and really make campus feel inclusive for those students. We want to make sure that we're visiting all those cultural centers at least once a month, more even. The cultural centers are the best part of OSU, and we really understand that as a future administration.
Now, we will hear another question from the student body directly.
Right now, I feel like there's kind of a bit of a partition between the general student body and the student government, and a lot of the students don't even really care or know how to get in contact.
First up, Alex and Trenton.
So this plays really well to one of our pillars, campus clarity. We actually want to start from how do we have more outreach from within ASOSU to reach out to the entire OSU community. For example, something as simple as having tweets going out during congressional meetings and during student fee committee meetings. Students can pull up their phone and see, this is exactly what my student government is talking about. This is how it affects me. I think it's really important that we have those initiatives within ASOSU, PR and marketing, tabling, any access that we can give for students from OSU more to the student government is absolutely crucial. We make decisions that have major impacts on the entire student body. They have everything to do with from student fees to how the buildings look on campus. Those are really important things to keep in mind. We want student voices. We want them to be aware of what we're doing. We are wanting to build that transparency beyond just them coming to us. We want to say, how do we reach out to you and give you the resources and educate you about what's really going on within your student government?
Absolutely. It's all about making sure that the students are taken care of and the students understand what's going on. And in order to do that, we need to go and ask the students, how can we educate you? How can we make sure that asking the students that question? Because if you're within ASOSU, you already know what it's like being a part of ASOSU. It's already accessible to you. You need to go and make sure that, and talk to the people who don't find it accessible and figure out what changes need to be made to make sure that it's accessible for them. It's really just making sure that you're moving to the tune of the students and making sure that you understand where the students are coming from and using the students as a tool to help themselves.
Next is Ayla and Leif.
Thank you for the question. One of our 4 main pillars is communication and visibility. One initiative we have under this is called our Young Bees initiative. So this would be inviting freshmen and transfer students to a large event with ASOSU resources and funding behind it. We really think that a lot of times freshmen are very disconnected with ASOSU. They don't really know about Safe Ride and the Office of Advocacy and legal services and all the things that ASOSU can do to help make their college experience a lot better. So by holding these events once a term for freshmen and transfer students, we can kind of draw them in, hear their concerns, and hopefully make their freshman experience and their transfer student experience a little bit better.
Yeah. Throughout our time working at ASOSU and the campaign, we've really noticed that there is a disconnect between student government and the general student body. So one of our initiatives under this that we want to roll out is what we're calling our Mocha Monday initiative. So this is going to be where Ayla and I are going to table under the SEC Plaza the first Monday of every month. We're going to hand out coffee to students as they walk by, listen to them about issues that they have on campus, and it's also going to be an opportunity for us to teach people about how ASOSU can be a service for everyone. We also want to continue doing things that the current administration has started, things like town halls, and also we would like to make sure that Senate and House meetings are at times that are accessible for the general public to come and attend, and also that we're posting things that goes on in those meetings, like making sure that the meeting minutes are posted and up to date.
Thank you. And finally, Rachel and Kylie.
Thank you. So our second pillar of our campaign is services, and we believe that encompasses the services that ASOSU can provide. So one of our initiatives in that pillar is a bi-monthly YouTube video where we'll highlight how our initiative progress is going for accountability, but also just explain to students what the organization can do for them and what services are available. We firmly believe it's the organization's responsibility to make itself accessible for all students on campus.
The outreach question comes up every single year, so clearly this is not something that can just be solved by one administration, which means that we need to have better continuity from administration to administration. When elected president and vice president kind of immediately start working, we need to have really good conversations with the people in there right now so we can get long withstanding relations with groups on this campus so they know ASOSU exists, they know it serves them. We need to make sure that ASOSU is a comfortable space for any student to come and visit and voice their concerns, especially because when they come and voice their concerns, like, it's more difficult to have a space be comfortable for that. I'd also like to remind everyone that ASOSU is getting an effective budget cut, so we don't really have money to implement so many outreach things. We have to use what the organization already has. We have to use the minds that are in office right now, and we have to use the documents that we already have.
Thank you all for your responses. We will now move to the third and final theme of the debate, qualifications for office. The first question for Ayla and Leif: is there any ideology that you feel should not be tolerated in student government?
Thank you for the question. As the Beavers Together administration, we really do encourage dissent. We want to have a broad range of topics because it's boring when you all agree with each other. However, we will not tolerate hate speech or anything that incites hate in our administration. We want to create an administration and cultivate a culture of respect, inclusion, and accountability. We really want our office space and our cabinet to be filled with people who value diverse opinions and know how to respect each other and hold conversations, events, and programs that kind of bring those wide range of perspectives together and acknowledge that we all come from different walks of life and we all deserve to respect because of that.
Yeah, I really just want to echo what Ayla said. Within our future administration, we really want to make sure that we're hearing from a broad range of perspectives and making sure that there is that diversity of thought when we're making decisions. We don't want it to be an echo chamber where we're just saying things and then hearing back and saying, oh yeah, that's a great idea, that's a great idea. We really want to make sure that we're hearing from people about why that isn't a great idea and what we can do to make sure that we can actually serve students as best as we can. It really just comes back to our 5 core values: compassion, honesty, accountability, inclusion, and respect. We want to make sure that student voices are heard, but we will not tolerate anything that makes students feel uncomfortable or excluded from campus.
Next, Rachel and Kylie.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that shouldn't be tolerated that ASOSU has been complacent to and therefore tolerating in the past, things like hate speech, white supremacy, and nationalism. That's just unacceptable that a whole student government has allowed that to take place. There are so many students on campus that deeply affects at a negative level, and it's unacceptable that went on for so long. Additionally, we'd like to discuss some of the power dynamics internal to the organization. As two women coming into a position of power, it's extremely important that we understand our roles and support each other, and we aren't caught into some ridiculous power dynamic that makes it harder for us to do our jobs solely because of being women.
Right. I worked in the executive branch last year and experienced some of those things firsthand, so I think we have a good understanding of how to not let those things happen and ensure that our staff members and other people who are involved are adequately heard and understood, and that those power dynamics can break down completely.
Additionally, we can actually, supposedly we have introduced a bill to the Oregon State Legislature that actually allows us to take stances on things like ballot measures and candidates for office outside of course, the university level. That will make it so we can actually take a firm and in pen, paper stance on issues that are ideologies. Maybe some candidate supports white nationalism, and we can take a stance against them as a university. That is something we would immediately work on as soon as we heard of a candidate of that type, or a ballot measure that doesn't support people who are immigrants on this campus. We would immediately take a stance to be against that ballot.
And finally, Alex and Trenton.
So I think there's a lot of ideologies that actually play into ASOSU. It has a lot of reflections of politics and of government, and so we want to really be aware of what's going on societally and what's going on in our own culture and here within the United States, outside of the United States as we have international students, and we want to say, how do we work with all these identities so that way students feel like they are a part of OSU. Beyond that, one of the things we really want to focus on is that ASOSU is not just for students interested in student government or just interested in getting involved. It's for every student here at OSU. ASOSU represents and is a part of the entire OSU community. Every member of the OSU community is ASOSU. We're all together within as Beavers and as members of Oregon State. So we really want to focus on how do we bring those voices to the table and how do we have those perspectives represented and a part of ASOSU, so we're able to have more interest and more focus on their own stories and their own perspectives. We also really want to focus on how do we break down ignorance of certain decisions and certain identities that might exist on our campus. We don't want to tolerate that in any sense. We really want to focus on, again, that perspectives of having that story of how do we bring everybody to the table and really elevate us as a community.
Absolutely. We just need to understand that all students are ASOSU. It is made up of all of us together, and we as a group can only as we as a group can make it go forward, and that ASOSU is focused on students serving each other, students serving students, and really just making sure that we are understanding that a lot of the things that affect us and plague us on a societal level are not exempt when it comes to ASOSU. Toxic masculinity, heteronormativity, white liberalism, rape culture, all these things permeate every part of our culture and our society, and we need to make sure that we understand that, recognize that, and take care of it.
Candidates, you may now give your rebuttals. We will begin with Ayla and Leaf.
Part of this really comes back to the cultural competency training that ASOSU Congress members receive in the summer before they take office. Leaf and I have really talked about this a lot, and we think that cultural competency training should be increased to have it once per term, because students will take that in the summer and then kind of forget those things that they learned in the summer. We really need to ensure that the way that ASOSU Congress members conduct themselves both inside and outside the office remains consistent throughout the year, and that means respect, that means inclusion, and that means accepting people who may be different than you. By increasing these competency trainings to every term, we can really maintain a culture of positivity and an atmosphere where all students feel like their voice is being heard.
And like was said, ASOSU is every student on campus, and so that means that we want to hear from every viewpoint that there is on campus. However, as a ASOSU, we should make sure that in the future, that when decisions are being made at the state and federal level, that we can make stances on campus that support our students.
Next is Rachel and Kylie.
Yeah, so I would just like to echo what Leaf just said about taking stances on ballot measures. I actually was a sponsor of that bill when we were trying to take a stance of no on Measure 105. So that's something very important that I hope to see continued. Hopefully it passes in the state legislature during this session.
Yeah, student government is really important because, of course, it represents the student. So it's really important that we're actually able to take these ballot measures. That's something Kylie and I are very excited to be very active about, to support our students, like Ed Ray sending out emails in support of like DACA recipients when Trump rolled back a lot of their protections. We'd also really like to see ASOSU help promote sort of things that go against negative ideologies, like toxic masculinity conferences that educate people on the issues that come out of toxic masculinity. And also, we'd really like to increase professionalism in the office. When we take office, we want our cabinet to be very professional and realistic with each other. People come from all sorts of backgrounds, so that's why the cabinet is really important, because we get to hear all of those diverse standpoints, and it needs to be a safe space for everyone.
Thank you. And now we'll move to Alex and Trenton.
So one of the things that Trenton and I really realized when we sat down to talk about running together is this difference between passive and active support. Right now we see a lot within the OSU community, passive support, where students say, oh yes, I support this, or yes, I support your identity. But beyond that, we want to start to encourage students in the student body to move beyond passive support and into the active support, into that space of allyship. Allyship and becoming an ally is a growth, it's a process. And so we want to encourage that process so students are actually able to start to break down some of those ideologies and break down some of the stigmas that they might have come from depending on their background. We really want to educate students about how do they become active allies and how do they support the entire OSU community.
Absolutely. It's all about education and growth for students, making sure that students are educated on things that they may not know and that things that they may have not been exposed to in their lives, as well as giving grace to students as they're learning and as they're being educated, understanding that students do not know about everything that we might think that they should know about, and giving the students that space to say, okay, this is something I'm learning, this is something I need to improve on, and giving them that grace to be able to improve upon the things that they don't know about.
Thank you, candidates. Our next question is, how would you make appointments to university committees, such as the University Budget Committee? Rachel and Kylie, you may respond.
That's kind of a question that's actually came up in Congress quite recently a lot with the standards and procedures that we have to appoint people these positions. I think it's very important to interview them to begin with. I think you actually really need to be hands-on in picking people for these positions, more than just a cover letter and a resume. I think it's really important to talk to them, understand what is really important to them on this campus, what they represent on this campus, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so appointees to committees like the Budget Committee have a lot of power on campus, so we want to ensure that they accurately represent what students want. So currently, appointees come and present to the House and Senate, and where the House and Senate can ask whatever questions they want of that appointee, and then ultimately, the House and Senate approves those appointees. So ensuring that those students have the accurate information on whatever appointee, and then ensuring that whoever we propose to put on a specific board or committee is accurately qualified for that position.
Also, I'd like to note that in Congress, especially in the House, because House representatives get elected every single year, Senate is every 2 years, so they typically are more experienced students. Not everyone really knows what is going on when this person is brought ahead to the entire House, and they're like, hey, ask them questions now. So I'd like to see a little bit better of preparation of students in the House and Senate for when these appointees come through, because we need to know what questions to ask, who this person is, and everything in between.
Next up, we'll hear from Alex and Trenton.
So before we get to the point of having the opportunity to appoint different people to these different positions, we want to make sure that everybody on our campus knows, as many people on our campus know, that these positions are available. Oftentimes, different students from different groups don't really know what's going on, don't know that these opportunities to be appointed to these positions are available to them, and that is something that they're able to do. So we want to make sure that as much as possible, we're getting as many students as possible from all different identities, all different groups within campus to understand that this is something that they can do and that they have the opportunity to do so.
Also playing off that, we have both two pillars within our campaign. It's representation and campus clarity. What Trenton just spoke on perfectly plays into our campus clarity of educating students about what resources are available and what opportunities are available for them within leadership. Also within that, we want to bring students from multiple identities and perspectives and backgrounds into those leadership positions. Specifically, one thing we've already talked about is we want to bring more faculty of color and more women faculty and faculty of multiple identities here to campus. We want students to be directly involved with that process, and students who are from those communities to be able to be represented on those boards boards, so they're able to speak and be a part of those processes. We think it's really important for students to see themselves within leadership positions on campus, within faculty. And part of that, so we speak about the University Budget Committee, we want students who are leaders. We want to seek out students who are leaders, vet them, make sure that they are aware of what the process is. Education is so highly important. They could be applying for a position that they're not fully aware of what it entails, and that does play to the education. We also want the entire student body to be aware that students have a voice in multiple capacities here on campus.
And finally, Ayla and Leaf.
One of the most important things that ASOSU does on campus is the appointment of students to various boards on campus. We want to make sure that the students that are appointed to these boards understand the responsibilities that come along with that. And we also want to make sure that when we're hiring or appointing people for these roles, that we're telling everyone about these positions in order so we get not someone who's just already in student government applying for that, but making sure that we're drawing from people with diverse experiences and diverse backgrounds to make sure that all students are represented on those groups. Another really important thing that the ASOSU administration does is appoint someone to the Board of Trustees. Along with that thing that Ayla and I want to create is an advisory board of different types of students on campus to advise that one student representative on the Board of Trustees. This way, regardless of who's sitting on that board, we would have students that would be able to advise that student that have come from a diverse background and diverse experiences to represent all students on campus.
Additionally, we really want to take a look at the holistic experience of the students we are appointing and ensure that Congress members know about the people that they're confirming. We'd like to hold a Meet the Appointees event a couple weeks before the people are confirmed so that Congress members can get to know who they're talking to and really learn about that background of that student who is going to be representing students in their positions.
Candidates, you may now give your rebuttals. We will begin with Rachel and Kylie.
So I think to begin with, one of the biggest issues that every single platform pretty much ever has seen is that ASOSU does not have enough visibility, so we don't necessarily get maybe the best students for these positions to get appointed because the students who may be the best representation don't know about them. So obviously increasing ASOSU visibility is going to be extremely important and integral to making this role perfect and making these standards to appointing students perfect. We have to get really creative with how we do that because I think year after year we've had like, oh, coffee with constituents and different events like, oh, come meet and greet. Kylie and I have really sat down and talked about how we want to make ASOSU visibility actually effective because in the past, the ways that we've seen kind of commonly haven't been so effective.
We also want to ensure that the boards that we're appointing students to have positions for students of all backgrounds. For example, like including graduate students to certain boards, because some of them are restrictive of graduate students currently.
Yeah, like the Board of Trustees. We want more than one student position in front of the Board of Trustees because that's such an important area.
Thank you. Next up, Alex and Trenton.
So one of the things that we've also spoke about within our campaign, within our platform, is how do we actually start to align the goals of campus? So right now, we believe that some things happen on one side of campus and the other side might not completely be aware, and those goals might actually align, and if we were to partner those departments together, it would be more effective for campus. Most of the time, that would also include those committees. Students are appointed to those committees, and they might have impacts on different sides of the community, so it really plays to that education. It's really important because different communities have different perspectives, different goals, and they're affected by different decisions within the university. So it's important that we're aware of what the students want and what they're going to be impacted by within these committees. I think it's also ASOSU being educated about what these committees do, so that we're more educated about what students we can place into these positions because we're aware of what impact those students will have within those committees.
Absolutely. We need to create as many spaces as possible to allow students to effectively and genuinely come together and collaborate and be part of the same community when they come from different communities and different backgrounds.
And now, Ayla and Leaf.
In order to increase awareness for the positions, we'd like to open the applications well in advance of the deadlines and keep those applications open for a long time. Hopefully, we can also go to each cultural association, each cultural resource center, and other campus organizations to really generate interest about these positions and kind of engage a more broad and a more diverse group pool of applicants.
Yeah, we really want to treat this more like a job interview than just us appointing someone that we like. We want to make sure that we're getting the most qualified people into those positions that have those diverse experiences so that they can best represent all students.
Our third question in this theme is, given your previous experiences, what is one responsibility of the ASOSU president you feel you would be especially qualified for? First, Alex and Trenton.
So one of the things that Trent and I also discussed is we come from very different leadership positions. I've held leadership positions in multiple aspects of campus, and in all of those positions, something that I've learned is that it's not about me. It's not about my name. It's not about what I plan to do. It's about what groundwork can I lay that now, 15 years from now, is really going to have an impact on the OSU community. In 15 years, nobody's going to remember if we were president or vice president. They're going to remember the work that we did and the impact it has on the OSU community. So we're really focused on it's beyond us. I think that's something that we've both learned within our leadership positions on campus. It's something that we walk away from and that you take into every aspect of your life. That's what makes you a team. That's what makes you a community, is beyond just your personal success and your personal ego.
Absolutely. It's all about support. It's all about making sure that students feel supported, making sure that they have someone who has their back, who will be there when things don't go right. I think that Alex does a great job of that. I know that I'll do a great job of doing that for her and for all the students. So just making sure that you have a president who has experience in leading people and supporting people and making people feel like they have someone who's watching their back.
Next, Ayla and Leaf.
Thank you for the question. We think one of the things that makes us the most qualified for these positions is that our activism started at a very early age. I've been involved with restorative justice and interfaith community building since high school. I volunteered at the Jackson Street Youth Center and gotten to understand and see the world through multiple perspectives and lenses. I think one thing that really sets us apart from other tickets is that our goals are clear, realistic, and tangible. In 2017, when the Oregon legislature, as we said before, passed a bill to get the cultural competency training for professors and staff, we know that with that bill, we have a clear and realistic way of implementing these initiatives. We've set it up so that we know what we want the workshops to look like. We know what we want people to get from the trainings. And we know the steps that we needed to take in order to achieve our goals. Additionally, we have that combined legislative and policy-making experience. We know the ins and outs of ASOSU, and we understand and have a vision for what we want the future of ASOSU to look like.
Yeah, I really believe that Ayla and I are uniquely qualified for going into the executive branch. We do have both that legislative and policy-making experience, and that's really what the executive branch is all about. It's combining those two things. And also with my work at Office of Advocacy, I've seen how to make policy changes that aren't just passing a resolution through the House and the Senate. I know how to have conversations with campus administrators and other campus leaders on how we can come to creative ways to actually change campus instead of just passing a resolution.
Finally, Rachel and Kylie.
I think what makes us the most qualified candidates is we actually know all of the different budgeting standpoints of ASOSU. We are getting a budget cut. That is a reality. We will not be able to implement really any new thing that costs any money. Kylie and I have worked with all sorts of different budgets and the multiple initiatives that we have implemented on this campus already. We've implemented multiple things through ASOSU, acting in a way like we were president and vice president. We went through the same angles there, but we didn't even have the support of the cabinet. We were still able to do it. So also ASOSU, you need really good leaders. And Kylie and I have been leaders this whole time. I've known Kylie for a long time now, and I've seen her excel in a whole bunch of different leadership roles. She's been to leadership conferences. I've seen her work every single group in her really tough engineering classes as a leader. And that's really important.
I think also one of the most significant things about Rachel and I is our sense of realism about what the organization can do and what we can accomplish in the year that we have. Both Rachel and I have spent time in the House. I spent time in the Senate and the executive branch, where I have really good internal understanding of how to get things done effectively within the organization.
We also really thoroughly understand the roadblocks in the way better than the other candidates, because our ASOSU experience is only within the ASOSU government, not the outside services ASOSU provides, or either the student fee areas as well. That's a reason why we are so heavily endorsed by current and former members of ASOSU.
Candidates, you may now give your rebuttals before we head to the closing arguments. We will hear from Alex and Trenton first.
Thank you. One of the things that we really want to emphasize is leadership looks different for different people. Everybody has their own path that they go through leadership. It may be through ASOSU, it might be through other venues, it might be through just simply being a leader in your classroom. But something we really want to emphasize is we have a very unique combination of leadership experiences that brings us to the table and has a very fresh perspective on ASOSU. We're ready to shake it up. We're ready to have a new sense of ASOSU government and a new take on how we approach student government as a whole. So we're really excited to say this is how our leadership has formed us for this, and this is how we can start to form that leadership within all of OSU.
Absolutely. In addition to that, by being a leader, you're called to encourage others to be leaders. Leaders make leaders. So really making sure that within a leadership position, supporting other people and inspiring other people and allowing other people to lead in their own right.
Thank you. Next is Ayla and Leif.
The reason that we came up with the slogan, Beavers Together, Reaching Greater Heights, is because we want to be an administration of progress. We want to draw on all of the incredible achievements before us and continue to strive to be the best ASOSU we can be together. Because of our experiences as leaders in various student organizations and groups across campus, we understand the needs and the barriers that students face on this campus. Because of our track record of serving students, we believe that we have a unique ability to propel our campus forward and really ensure that students are getting the most out of their time at OSU.
Yeah, I also think it's important to realize that leadership looks different for everyone. It's not just being involved in an elected position in ASOSU. Leadership happens everywhere on campus, and I think what Ayla and I offer is a really unique set of experiences and backgrounds involved in student government and organizations that we can really thrive in office next year.
And now, Rachel and Kylie.
One of the biggest reasons that we ran is because OSU, and specifically ASOSU, have given us a lot of opportunities to succeed in Corvallis and later in our future, of course. We ran because we want students, or we know what students want, and we know how to implement these changes through ASOSU because we've been so involved in the past, and we've actually implemented things and changes through ASOSU in the past. Leading will allow us to delegate different responsibilities to the people in our cabinet who we know the strengths of. That's a really big part of leadership, is knowing the strengths and weaknesses of each of your people and playing off of them and growing at every single angle that's possible.
And I think also Rachel and I have skills that we've acquired outside of the organization that will be beneficial for us within our roles. So Rachel has been working as a lobbying at the state capitol within PSLA, and I've done work with data and changing paths of colleges to better serve students.
Now the candidates will have 1 minute to provide closing statements. First, Rachel and Kylie.
So thank you all for coming here today, of course. Thank you everyone who listened to that whole long shebang there. Of course, we're debating and talking about really important issues on this campus. We talked about things like DC and the cultural centers and their high importance and the student fee level setting process, which is going to become only more difficult as student enrollment decreases and budgets become more complicated. We talked about student fees and social justice and qualifications for office. Hopefully you saw that no matter what we talked about, Kylie and I remain focused on the needs of students and how we can use our extensive experience to address those needs.
Each pillar of our campaign, people, services, and surroundings, contribute to the betterment of student wellness at OSU. We chose these issues to focus on because we believe they deserve the utmost attention and energy.
Kylie and I believe in what our campaign stands for, of course, and we know that we can achieve the goals we have set. Our campaign is the most realistic, we have the most experience, and that is why we are the most endorsed.
We feel it is now our time to give back to the community.
We will continue to work for these issues no matter what. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next is Alex and Trenton.
I want to say thank you to all the candidates and everybody here and everybody watching online. What we really want to focus on is that we bring, like I said before, a unique perspective of leadership to campus. I've been a part of Orange Media Network, Beaver Dam, Academic Learning Assistant, Academic Success Center. I've lobbied in DC, the Student Fee Committee. I've had a lot of experiences within my leadership here on campus and advocating for students within all of those positions.
Absolutely. I think, like she said, we just have very widespread and unique perspectives on leadership. I've been in a leadership position within DCE. I've started organizations on this campus. I've been president and vice president of organizations on this campus. I've worked with pre-college programs. I'm in the honors college. I've done all these different things, as is Alex. And I think one thing that we've both learned within all of our different experiences on campus is that leaders make leaders and people follow people. People join people that they feel will support them and that they feel will lead them and have the skill set to support them.
We really want to emphasize that together with all these experiences, we'll be able to focus on cultivating a holistic community and culture and really focusing on this idea that at the end of the day, no one stands alone. Thank you.
And finally, Ayla and Leif.
First, we just would like to thank everyone who has supported our campaign so far. We can't thank enough all the folks from our campaign team for all the time and effort that they've put in. We'd also like to thank the amazing organizations, groups, and students that we've had the opportunity to have conversations with these past 3 weeks. I've had conversations with so many folks on campus and have been inspired by all the student change that is occurring.
Throughout our campaign, students have often told us that they like what Leaf and I stand for, but wonder if they can trust us to follow through on our commitments. The best way for us to answer this question is to let you know that our commitments to social justice, activism, and leadership run deep. We have a strong track record of setting goals and achieving them. If you want to know how we will act as ASOSU President and Vice President, our past experiences are a good indicator. We will work diligently every day to bring Beavers together and to help students develop the resources they need to thrive during their time at OSU. In such a divisive political climate, it's important that we have allies and that we are allies. If elected, we will never speak for the communities we serve, but rather we will bring those students to the table and stand together in solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidates, thank you for your thoughtful answers, and students, thank you for your insightful questions.
The voting period for president and vice president, as well as all other open positions in ASOSU, has already begun. Students can vote online up until this Friday.
The Barometer will provide updates throughout the week and the results of the election after voting closes Friday, February 22nd at 10 p.m., both on social media and online at dailybarometer.com. If you want to rewatch the debate, the full broadcasting will be on KBVR-TV's Facebook, YouTube, or website.
Thanks for watching. From all of us here at Orange Media Network and ASOSU, I'm Delaney Shea.
And I'm Joe Wolf. Thank you and good night.